Hello. So this week I want to talk about having those challenging conversations, and I want you to consider how to deliver that in both compassionately and in a very direct way. So basically, it's about being direct without being mean. If you need to have a direct conversation with someone, which we all will, and if you're a project manager, you will very likely have to have one probably in the next week because that's just part of the job, or if you're a leader or if you're a parent, right? So the idea is we don't want to brush this aside. You don't want to be, I just hope it goes away, because it's not going to go away. It doesn't go away. So, most oftentimes it does not go away. So we do need to set the intention to have the conversation. And when we go in to it, what do we want from it? So I always like to think about, I want to be productive and effective in this conversation. It isn't about me being more powerful or, exerting my power or being right. It's about being productive and effective. So in the case of, if I've got a team member that's just not hitting a deadline and it's happening repeatedly, before it becomes a really big issue, I've got to have that conversation. And so I need to go into that conversation by setting my intention. Okay, I want to solve this problem, right? How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to set some clear intentions. First, I want to start being curious about what's happening there. Why aren't these deadlines being met? And that's important to be engaging. It's a conversation that we're having. Then it's not you're not doing this, and why aren't you doing this? It's not an interrogation, it's a conversation. So I want to be curious and I want to keep it respectful. So basically do what your mom said and treat people the way you want to be treated, right? So you can't you're not going to be able to control how they react to you, right? But you can control how you treat others. So keep it very respectful, and then be open to their perspective. As you're having this conversation, remember that the goal is to be productive, at least in my case, was to be productive and effective. Okay, so what does that mean? Where can I find that common ground? Well, likely my team member would want to get this project out the door as well, right? It's not that they don't want to get it done. They probably do, but there's something holding them back. What is that, and how is there anything that can be done about that? Is there anything I can help with on that? So when we deliver our messages and we have that conversation in both a direct but compassionate way, we build trust. When we brush things aside, you're not building trust there. Or if we complain about it to other people, we're not building trust there. And we're not getting anything accomplished either. So we have to have direct. But bringing that compassion into it and being clear with our intention, that's a really great opportunity to build trust with your team member. So it isn't about going into this to exert your power. We may think we're being tough, and that toughness is going to earn us the respect, but that's just not the case. Respect comes when you show respect to others. You get it in return. So we need to respect others, be direct, but also be compassionate. So the first thing we want to do is set that intention before going into it, and keep our ego in check, of course, because our ego is always going to be talking to us about this. I don't know why they keep doing this on my projects. The ego. The ego is there. It will always be there. We just need to acknowledge it, but not take actions from it. So that's the first and foremost, is acknowledge the ego and then set your intention. The second part of this is you aren't responsible for how they react to your message. So we've talked about this before too. So people want to do a good job. And if you're having a direct conversation with them, even when you're being really respectful, sometimes it just comes, you hit people on the wrong day and they're feeling bad, and they get reactive to you, or they're feeling defensive, or they're a victim and they just get reactive to you. That's not within your power or your control. So you have to let that go. And the thing that you can do in that moment is not invite your ego to that party, because that's just going to get ugly fast, but rather to remember that you have that intention to be productive and effective, and that isn't going to be helped by your ego, becoming victimized by how they're responding to you. So I have a really powerful example of this, me having to receive some critical feedback. And if you know me, you've probably heard this gray dress story before, so you can probably shut it off at this point. But otherwise, this is my gray dress story, and it's so powerful for me because it taught me so much about ego and receiving that feedback. I was presenting a design on a project, a web design, to a client, and he absolutely hated this design. And I could see very quickly that he was having basically like a visceral reaction to it. I had never seen that happen before, but because I really liked the design, but design is subjective, and I understand that. So he was having a very visceral reaction to it. His face was getting red and he's getting worked up, and I was like, oh boy, so here we are. So, but I absolutely needed to figure out what I need the feedback, right? So I'm asking him to share what he doesn't like about the design, and he just goes off. And he starts ranting. Yeah, well, it's like, I hate the gray. It's just gray's everywhere. It's in our houses. You're wearing gray. I hate that gray dress. And I was like, well, it just got personal. And at that point, I was sort of like leaving the body and observing this conversation. It was almost like I could see the conversation happening outside of myself a bit. And it was intriguing and interesting to me as opposed to offensive, which it could have been, right? So at that point, I could have, if I did not feel safe, you have two options in these cases. If it does start to get personal, you have two options. You can just shut it down. If you aren't feeling safe, if you aren't feeling like you can separate yourself from that ego and move forward, then probably pausing that conversation and saying, we'll have to pick this up on a later date is probably your best choice. But if you're able to sort of just see it for what it is, and for me, I desperately wanted to get the feedback so I could get this design right, because I just want to move this project forward and not have more like this. I just wanted to get this right for him, but for our project team as well, and for myself, so I could limit this exposure. So the point is, I kept probing. I said, okay, this is not personal. So I want to get your feedback. I hear you're not liking the gray. Is there anything else? And I remained level, and I captured his feedback. I repeated it back to him, and a beautiful thing happened. As I was calm, he returned to calm. If I would have gotten reactive, that would have made a bad situation so much worse. In the end, I was able to capture that feedback. I was able to take that back to the team, and we were able to get him a design that worked. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of that gray dress story, because I was able to not let the ego take control of that conversation. I can't control how he's reacting, but I absolutely get to decide how I'm going to react to that and move forward from there. Of course, I'm not always able to do that. And if you're having one of those days and you're not able to, it is always okay to just say, I have to pick this up at a later date. I can't do this right now, but I need to hear what you're saying. So let's try again tomorrow or in an hour or whatever. The final thing to think about if you're on the receiving end of this is make sure that you keep in check with how am I feeling after receiving it, and before you race off to your next task and spread the love or the lack of it, maybe just pause, give yourself a little love, do whatever you need to kind of shake that off, and before you move forward. So think about those direct conversations. Think about being compassionate and respectful. And that is a great opportunity to build trust, build your relationships with your team members, with friends, family, all of the people that you're going to be having these conversations with in your lifetime. Keep it compassionate. You aren't tougher if you're just mean. So don't be mean. Be compassionately direct and see what that does for you. Have a great week.